Now, Nigerian exports to the United States will now attract a 15% tariff that follows the signing of a July 31st executive order by U.S. President Donald Trump. And this modified America's reciprocal tariff system. The new tariff, which will take effect from August 7th, formally places Nigeria among about 40 countries penalized for having what Washington considers an unbalanced trade relationship with the United States. Trump had previously imposed a 14% tariff on Nigerian imports in April as part of a series of tariff strikes aimed at boosting U.S. manufacturing and punishing other countries for what he called years of unfair trade practices. Under the new structure, countries with the U.S., which the U.S. has a trade deficit with, will now face a default 15% duty on all goods entering American borders, whereas nations with a U.S. trade surplus, by contrast, will pay a lower 10% duty. Well, joining us on the show to discuss the effects of Donald Trump's tariffs is Professor Ekpo, an economist. He would also share his thoughts on rebasing Nigeria's GDP and the danger of continuous importation of petroleum products on the Naira and the economy as a whole. Good morning, sir, and welcome to the program today.
Good morning.
Good morning, Prof. Sir.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, Prof. And thank you for joining us. Well, you are the subject area expert. You are our teacher. But first, Trump's tariffs, which has upended global trade, and then the long-term implications, and this big elephant in the room, China, and the tit for tat between the U.S. and China, which has been suspended now till August 12. What do you think is the big implication for global trade? And the second part, of course, is about tariffs, the African countries that have been affected within this loop. And then, of course, our own basic interest, Nigeria. Although everyone has been saying Nigeria does not need to worry much because in terms of trade, it's just oil. And even now, the U.S. is exporting more crude oil to Nigeria than vice versa.
Well, thank you very much. Good questions. You see, President Trump has created a major problem for the global economy. You know, he's obsessed with tariffs. Okay? And my view is that the tariffs is generally a tax, as we all know. So it has implications for the U.S. economy, for the world economy. The biggest is that it has created uncertainty in the global system, created a lot of distortion. Because, you know, on ground we have the WTO that normally tries to regulate trade among nations. So his obsession with tariff, in my view, has implications for the U.S. economy itself, global economy, and to some extent Nigeria. For U.S. economy, it's a tax. So no matter how he describes it, it will lead to higher prices in this economy because the companies will pass some of that tax to consumers, and that will raise prices. And unluckily for the U.S. economy, where we normally have elections. So we'll see how that plays out. For the global system, maybe the uncertainty will disrupt the global supply chain and things like that. And that, so even countries that are not paying, maybe paying 10%, have to pay 10% tariff, they will be affected because the world is no longer just one country, it's a global system. Yeah. For Nigeria, as you said, in my view, I'm sure you're aware that oil and gas is exempted.
Yes.
Yes. So, and our major export to the US is oil in particular. Our non-oil export is very minimal. But we'll be affected because when there's a global uncertainty, we also trade with other countries. Okay? So the bottom line is that any country like Nigeria with so much resources, you have to build a strong, resilient economy so you can absorb any shock that comes from anywhere. That's why they're very careful dealing with China. You know, all this is saying is when it comes to China, there's a pause. Oh, we'll see what will happen. Because China has a very robust, strong economy. In fact, China can dictate what they want. Okay? For us here, yes, the non-oil export is minimal. Oil and gas is not affected, but we don't have a strong economy in terms of the global uncertainty that Trump has created. So we are going to be affected as a client in any way. You know, so what we have to do is to build a strong Nigerian economy And we have what it takes to do that so that we can resist any shock that comes from anywhere, whether it's President Trump or another country. That's my view, yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I'm glad you said that, because globally we're seeing majority of countries are engaged in some form of realignment. They're taking a relook at how they run their economies and trying to see where they can position themselves. I always give the example of a Kenya and a Morocco, for example, who have the bare minimum, the 10% where tariffs are concerned, but they're still looking at this as an opportunity and looking for ways that they can tap into it to benefit their country. Are you content with the response that we are making domestically here in Nigeria? What are some of the movements and the shifts you want to see happening, and in what time frame, so that we can also be adequately positioned for this new world order?
Well, let me say that normally no country wins a trade war. It's a trade war, in a sense. My surprise that countries have not started retaliating. Because if you impose a tax on my economy, and it also retaliate. We've not seen that happen yet.
The EU says they are waiting for the next 6 months.
Exactly. So the next 6 months, negotiate. So no country wins a trade war. So I'm surprised that the United States, with all this people with all this intelligence and everything, they can't advise him on what to do. As I said earlier, again, there's something I forgot to say. There are blocks being built around, even before this, okay? Like the BRICS. Yes. The BRICS are going to be a very formidable bloc. And more than that, they are even challenging the strength of the dollar, okay? So in the long term, that will be a major development. And Trump is aware, he's been saying that if the BRICS begin to affect U.S. policy in terms of the dollar, it will impose tariff. Some of the tariffs don't make sense. A country like Brazil is trying their former president. Because of that, it imposes tariff. So for all I said, we need to make sure that domestically we have a strong economy. I know that Kenya and some countries are beginning to trade with what I would call non-dollar currency. Okay, so these are part of the non-alignment. Okay, you make sure you get ready in case anything happens. So I think that's the way to go. For Nigeria and our sub-region, I hope that we see. Another problem is that the countries in Africa, I don't think we are united to the extent where we can fight what the US is saying. We are not. Okay? Well, it's shocking that some countries are even accepting prisoners, for money. It doesn't make sense. So it appears that the unity is just on paper. If we united, we'll fight as a bloc. Okay. Now, in some cases, the blocks will not make sense in what Trump is doing, because the blocks, you go as a bloc. Take, for example, the African Free Trade Zone. What is their role in this matter? As a bloc, they can't do much. It has to be bilateral. One, because even the so-called trade zone, we all produce the same thing. Okay? We're not industrialized, so we are vulnerable. So as a country, you have to build a strong economy. By a strong economy, I mean you have to work towards being industrialized, so you can withstand external shocks, whether it's positive or negative.
Prof, God bless you, sir. You just hit the nail on the head. So what can we do to be able to ensure that our own economy is strong? Because, Prof, it's never been strong in a while. And look at the oil we have always depended on. Times are changing. So what can we do? Well, I mean, that was what gave rise to me asking the question about productivity numbers. Okay, what's even the metric tonnage of rice? What's this, that we're producing? Where are we on that? And also, what can we also do to ward off influences on our agricultural scene? Prof, they've been talking about GMOs. It's not just an ordinary job. People have their own concerns also.
Actually, in our economy, we have to be honest. Our economy is in disarray completely. Okay? I hear about performance in the last 2 years been so good. I ask myself, what data are they looking at? Because I look at the same data. Normally, in my profession, although I'm left of it, it is the micro that you aggregate, allowing for some aggregation bias. Then you have a macro. The macro data does not show that we are building a strong economy. And it has been so for example, From 2012, our economy has been in the phase of stagflation. From 2012, sorry.
2012?
Yes, of stagflation. You talk about agriculture. Agriculture in Nigeria, if there's any marginal increase, is due to rainfall, nature, and increased acreage. The use of science, very minimal. Not talk about in recent times, the insecurity. So the numbers you are seeing don't make sense. Now, even numbers you see that the structure of the economy, since 1963, Nigeria's manufacturing sector has contributed less than 12% to GDP. Okay? For you to have a strong economy, that subsector, especially manufacturing and its value chain, must contribute at least 40% to GDP. That's not the case. Now, this is the irony of it, in terms of the structure. Recent data shows that, even recent data with the rebasing, that services contributes about 55% or so to GDP. We have to be very cautious. Very careful. It's a false, I don't know how to put it, but
a false narrative.
A false narrative. Because it shows that we have arrived. In terms of the growth trajectory, you go from agric to industry, within industry, manufacturing, and then services. So, and our service sector in Nigeria is still very rudimentary. It's not linked to manufacturing or any other sector. Even the agric sector and mining, our petroleum sector, we export crude petroleum. We don't refine. It's not linked to agriculture. It's not linked to pharmaceutical. It's not linked to petrochemical. So you see, so when I hear them say that the economy is being diversified, I say, are they looking at the data? Because the oil sector still dominates the economy, defines the structure of the economy. Yes.
Prof, you know, of course, that IMF and the World Bank, they keep saying that the Tinubu reform is doing very well. And that's what the Tinubu administration keeps quoting. That even people who are far away in Washington, D.C., they can see that there is a turnaround. But Nigerians don't seem to believe.
No, there's no...
However,
go ahead,
I would like to ask you about this other contentious issue, borrowing.
Okay.
The Nigerian government says, we have not borrowed enough, that we still have enough room, up to 56-70% to borrow more. But the naysayers are saying, you have borrowed 50%. What are you borrowing for? Where is the evidence? But the government says, well, we are doing infrastructure, we are energizing education, we are also as the professional. So you disagree with IMF World Bank?
Well, I don't think you know my antecedents.
Sir?
My antecedent.
I know your antecedents.
I've never been a supporter of the IMF World Bank policies. Okay? For several reasons, which we don't have time to discuss. The IMF World Bank, the major interest is how to make sure the economy remains dependent on external sources and underdeveloped to a large extent. It's the issue of debt. Unfortunately, my last job, I worked where we used to do debt stability analysis. In Nigeria, the debt profile is increasing. There's no question. Okay? Now, this is my worry. You rebase the GDP. So the denominator, debt GDP, becomes large. If you look at the numerator, you have space to borrow. Must you borrow? Because GDP does not pay debt. Revenue pays debt. If you look at the debt revenue ratio, we're in trouble.
Debt to revenue ratio,
Because the denominator, which is revenue, for the first time I seem to agree with the IMF, that revenue denominator, you're not sure of what will happen because a lot of it comes from oil. The oil price, you have no control. It goes up and down. The quantity, you have no control. OPEC determines. Okay? So you are using an exogenous source of revenue, you have no control, to finance development. So the debt, for now you are paying, so you think it's sustainable. If anything happens to the oil sector, you can't pay debt. So what are they borrowing for? Most of the borrowing, we are told, is being for infrastructure, right? They're not transparent about it. Okay? Where I worked some years ago in YFM, I was DG, we showed that they were borrowing to finance recurrent. We didn't agree, but towards the end of Ngozi Mela's departure, she admitted that they borrowed to finance the current.
Which is waste.
So when you are borrowing, you think of two things. Borrowing is intergenerational. Those borrowing today will not pay for it. Grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And they come and see that no infrastructure, nothing. As we are speaking, in this country, power supply is very epileptic. I'm sure you are aware. So are you borrowing to, if you borrow to only make sure that we have power 24 hours, so that the economy can grow? Because research shows that if you increase power supply by 1%, you increase GDP by 3.5%. So the borrowing is not transparent. Now, that's how we borrow. If you are borrowing to finance infrastructure that will pay its way, and you've done your analysis, you've done enough to show that that project will pay its way over time and bring returns. I'm not sure that is being done holistically. So they don't think of the next generation. As I tell people, when our great-grandchildren come to see what we've done, they will even abuse us in our graves. So there's a need to look at the old debt thing again, because at one point you are aware we are giving debt forgiveness. We were part of the debt overhang. We've started again borrowing.
Will anybody grant debt forgiveness?
No, they can't do it anymore because we are not serious.
No, Nigeria can go and ask for debt forgiveness.
Doc,
maybe if there is another COVID-19.
The other obsession about our economy, which bothers me, is the obsession, celebration about revenue, increased revenue. Okay? You're increasing revenue. What are you increasing it for? You're increasing revenue to give to the political class to waste and perhaps to service debt. You don't look at the other side of fiscal measure. You're not looking at, you mentioned debt, which is part of fiscal
but they argue now that they have $40 billion in reserve, that is one of the highest, over 40 increase in reserve.
The reserve, yes, they may have $1 billion in reserve, but it's provisional. I was a member of the Central Bank Board and the MPC for years. When they tell you they have so much reserve, it's provisional. If anything happens to the oil sector, we're in trouble. I don't know where I get my point. So reserves are okay. You have them. You can have your letter of credit being honored, but that's not what you must have. A productive economy where your reserve is not dependent on the export of crude, but depend on firms that are producing, exporting non-oil goods and services, and earning foreign exchange. That's why you can be sure that your reserve makes sense. And that takes us back to the issue of the exchange rate. You know, this talk that is stable.
Yeah. So is it not stable? They said they don't converge.
You see, stability, at least in economics, the guide is that stability, you ask first at what level? 15,1,500 is too high because it has passed through to inflation.
Yeah.
When inflation goes up, it affects the poor people more than the rich. And the middle class is virtually being wiped out.
You've not told us the fair value of the naira as we speak.
Yes.
Based on some parameters,
the value of the naira
is about 1,100 or 1,000.
They claim that the value of the naira is market determined. It doesn't make sense because given our context, I'm sorry to say, the market cannot determine the value of our naira. The central bank has to implement a managed float. Yeah. Because your currency naira is not convertible, you're not productive, so the supply curve in the Forex market is not well behaved. So I tell them, give me data to show that if central bank pulls out, the Forex market will not collapse. So when you say stability, you ask, what level?
They say convergence.
And in whose interest? In that stability. Yeah. See, the problem we have in this country is that...
But they said they've saved more money in defending the naira than the last time, as we wrap up.
Yeah, if they spend more money for the naira, that means they are doing a managed float. That we're not doing damage control. Central bank is intervening. It's a managed float. You can't float. They
don't deny that it's a managed float.
The former regime had too many exchange rates. That's the problem. The money float. Which what we could have done at the beginning instead of saying, let's unify the exchange rate, and we'll find ourselves in this.
No, they said it's a managed float at the beginning.
Okay. They have not denied that it's a managed float. Yes, okay. They made that clear from the very beginning.
All right.
So you now ask what level?
Okay.
The thing already is too high.
The devil is in the details.
Professor,
thank you very much, Prof.
Extremely enlightening. I think. Thank you so much for raising a lot of pertinent points that will keep us reflective for a while. Thank you so much, Professor Ekpo.